You're listening to the Jefferson Exchange. Thanks for joining us. The JX starts today with the debrief, where JPR reporters discuss the stories they've been covering this week, including a new tiny home community, drought causing a different kind of problem, and new ways to balance the budget in Klamath County. I'm Maria Carter, JPR's news director.
I'm Justin Higginbottom, public health and safety reporter.
And I'm Jane Vaughn, housing, homelessness, and education reporter.
Jane, you covered a story this week about a new tiny home community coming to Medford. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so that community is going to be called Joy Community. It will have 10 tiny homes, and it's meant for seniors in particular. And so the program is going to be run by Set Free Services, which is a faith-based social services nonprofit. And they've selected 10 older homeless folks who are going to live there. It would be a long-term place where people can stay, so it's not transitional. Some people have called it their final resting place. You know, it's a place where they can grow old and die, and they plan to be there for the rest of their lives. So it's not something they need to worry about where they're going to go next. Most of the homes have little kitchens and bathrooms, but then they'll also have a community bathrooms, showers, kitchens. People can cook. If you're in one of the homes that doesn't have those amenities, there'll also be laundry facilities. They hope to have a garden on site, other amenities, a store, and it's a low barrier program. So that means there are fewer obstacles for people to live there. So, for example, you don't have to be sober to live there, but there are some rules. So you can't have drugs on site. You have to do chores to live there to sort of upkeep the property. There can't be any violence. People have to pay a program fee to live there, which would be up to $500, depending on the size of the homes and the amenities in them. And this project so far has cost about $600,000, which has all been funded by donations.
So why is Joy Community focusing specifically on seniors?
Because there is a huge problem right now with an increase in homeless seniors in particular. A lot of people are ending up homeless for the first time after age 50, so after theoretically a lifetime of work. And there are a lot of reasons for this. Social Security has not kept pace with inflation. A lot of people are getting priced out of their homes. High rent is a huge problem, so people over 50 are the group that is most likely to spend more than half of their income on rent.
Wow.
And so as the rent keeps increasing, Social Security has not kept pace. Maybe you don't have a lot of savings, and so you get priced out of your home, end up on the streets. We know that nationally, about 20% of the homeless population right now is 55 or older. And I just did a story about this recently, which you can find on our website, focused specifically on older homeless folks. But it seems that usually a lot of people hit maybe 50, sort of middle age, and then something happens, some life event. They get sick, their spouse gets sick, maybe they lose their job, maybe their spouse dies. They have no savings. Maybe they've been working a physically demanding job they can't do anymore. And then there just aren't very many options for them, and so they end up on the streets. And we know that that also has a lot of trickle-down impacts. Homeless older adults are expected to die much earlier than the general population. Their death rates are more than 3 times higher than the general populations. So there are clearly a lot of problems, really increasing population of older homeless adults. And that's the big problem that Joy Community is trying to address here with this project. They've got these 10 tiny homes specifically for seniors. And I talked to someone at the site yesterday who said they have a wait list that is over 120 people long. So it's really a needed sort of program.
And as you just mentioned, Jane, you were out at the tiny home community yesterday and talked to some residents who are going to be moving in. What did they have to say?
Yeah, I talked to a couple people. One of them is named Cheryl Ames. She's 76. She became homeless when she left her husband. They'd been together for 32 years, but she left him due to his substance abuse. And so here's what she had to say about her new home.
How lucky. Look at how lucky can you be, to have such a blessing like this. A home, a place you could call home, and take care of everything around you.
And she was taking care of everything while I was there. She was walking around with a jug of water, watering all the flowers. They had a bunch of flowers set up, so she's already taking care of things and keep taking care of her new home, the new
community too.
Exactly,
right?
yeah, her neighbors' flowers. And then I also talked to a woman named Fern Gatson Rush, who's 66. She had been living in her car for a while. She's now living at one of the Rogue Retreat shelters, but says she's really looking forward to this community to have some stability and some freedom and sort of to have her own space. So here's what she had to say about that.
I'm going to enjoy living around people who are my age. People who are my age have had or are having the same experience that I am because it builds a sense of community.
And like she says, being around people who are your own age, older folks really need community like we all do,
Yeah.
and they can bond and have people who have similar experiences. And so they're really looking forward to that.
So is Joy Community open now? Is it accepting applications? Where are we at?
So they have the 10 seniors who are going to live there. It is not yet open. It's not finished. They're not sure when that will be. They haven't set a date. Hopefully soon. They still need electricity hookups for the site. Some of the buildings aren't even finished yet. They had some that are done that I got to see and take pictures of, but the site is not quite ready for people to move in. So we'll have to keep an eye out for when it officially opens.
And Jane, you also covered another story this week. You've been busy about potential new voluntary retirement program in Klamath County. First, tell us how that would work.
We don't really know yet. It's still kind of a theoretical idea in the consideration phase for the Board of Commissioners. We do know that it would be, as you said, a voluntary program for county employees. They're calling it a retirement and/or resignation program. We know that this kind of tracks with what's been happening nationally. A lot of federal employees have also been taking buyouts or early retirement. That's been amidst a lot of cuts by the Trump administration. And we know that Josephine County also did something kind of similar recently. So the Klamath County commissioners were looking at what Josephine County did this week as sort of an example. So in late February, Josephine County sent out this offer for full-time employees who had been working in local government for at least 3 years. And the offer was you can resign and get 4 months of severance pay. And that offer was made to the first 32 workers who accepted. And the goal was to sort of deal with their budget problems. And we know that 18 people took that buyout. So that's what's happened in Josephine County, and now Klamath County is sort of maybe considering something similar.
Well, why would they be considering it?
As a cost savings measure, basically, they're also having some budget problems like Josephine County. They just had to fill an almost $7 million budget shortfall
wow.
for the upcoming fiscal year, the 25-26 budget. And so they're trying to put themselves in a better financial position. They had to use reserves and one-time grants to fill that massive spending deficit, but those options are obviously finite and running out, and so they're trying to make a better long-term fiscal strategy. And so this potential retirement resignation program is one thing that they're considering. One of the Klamath County commissioners, Kelly Minty, said that older employees are good for the county because they have longevity, but they're also more expensive to employ than a newer employee, so there could be some cost savings there. In terms of why the county is in this position, I talked to one of the commissioners, Derek DeGroot, who was saying that the cost of services is going up, but taxes and revenues have been staying the same or even decreasing. We know there's been some concerns about cuts to the Secure Rural Schools program, which provides financial support for rural county services like schools and roads. There's concerns about that not going through. That's meant to offset losses in logging revenue because the timber industry has declined over the years, which had provided revenue for critical services. And so there's been a lot of impacts to rural counties, to Klamath County. Klamath County has particularly struggled with a lack of funding for law enforcement. They voted down, actually, a measure in May that would have formed a public safety service district in the eastern part of the county. So that's been a concern as well. So that's why they're kind of in this position of trying to consider options to make a better long-term financial strategy. At a meeting this week, the commissioners also lifted a hiring freeze that had been in place since last August, so that's one thing. But again, Commissioner Derek DeGroot said the only way really for the county to address this deficit is by reducing their staff, because those costs make up the majority of the budget. And so that's really what they're looking at. I will caution and say that there is no timeline for this yet. It's not going to happen super soon. It's in the consideration phase, and HR is going to bring back some potential proposals, and then the commissioners will approve their budget later this month.
Okay, thanks, Jane.
Maria, I'm going to turn the microphone around to you.
No.
You didn't report this story. It's on the Josephine County Extension Service. Our colleague Roman Battaglia did, but you did edit it, and he's out sick.
Yeah, I'm pinch hitting for him.
So you're in. So tell us why Josephine County had previously cut funding for the Extension Service and the 4-H programs.
Well, in 2024, Josephine County Commissioners defunded the Extension Service district. That's a taxing district. They halted tax collections and program operations. But, since then, there are new commissioners in. And that original decision stemmed from what they said were concerns about how Oregon State University, who runs the extension service, around transparency regarding the use of the tax revenue. There was also a desire to prioritize livestock education over some broader programs. And anyone familiar with 4-H, which is common in a lot of schools and rural areas for kids and teens, they can learn a lot about agriculture type things, raising chickens and cows and gardening and all that kind of stuff. But they also do a lot of other things. There's cooking, photography, leadership classes, and even these days there's robotics. So I think that maybe that was what some of that objection was to, is that it had gotten too broad.
Right, I remember that. Yeah. So what actually happened there?
Well, in a budget committee earlier this week, the members, including all 3 county commissioners, approved restoring some frozen funds for the extension service, which includes 4-H. And 2 of the 3 commissioners approved resuming collecting taxes for the extension district. So, and then the majority of the rest of the committee approved that too.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's sort of a flip for them. So what happens next?
Well, the full commission still has to approve all of this, but given the votes, it looks very promising. The final vote on the budget and everything will be later this month. And as for the extension service, they're saying, hey, if that happens, starting July 1st, they could begin resuming operations. And it may take a while to ramp up. They had to let a lot of staff go, and, they'll have to hire back people. But yeah, we could see some of that restarting in Josephine County as soon as July.
Okay, great. Thanks, Maria.
Thank you. Justin, you had a story this week on reports of Tehama County sinking. Tell us what's going on here.
Yeah, so it's actually sinking, just very slowly. It's called land subsidence, and that actually means the ground is dropping. So county officials sent out a press release a week or 2 ago that seemed to have caught, residents off guard. And it said that parts of the county had observable land subsidence on a scale that has never been recorded. So the Tehama County Board of Supervisors met this week to discuss the issue. Here's Public Works Deputy Director Justin Jensen at that meeting.
Our threshold for total subsidence is 0.5 feet. We are roughly halfway there over the last 5 years. The threshold is the thing that you want to avoid at all costs.
So he said the county uses the satellite imaging called INSAR, which can measure drops in the Earth's surface pretty accurately, and that's what they're finding. Some areas of Tehama, including the Red Bluff subbasin, so not actually where Red Bluff is, but kind of that basin where it sits in, is sinking. And, half a foot doesn't sound like a lot, but Jensen said in that meeting that, imagine you're driving down a road and come across a 2-inch bump. That can be pretty dangerous. So this can have major impacts on infrastructure, on roads, on buildings, and things like that. And he says this is something that needs to be addressed, sooner rather than later.
Well, ground it's supposed to be stable. What is actually causing this to sink?
It has to do with groundwater. So basically, as the groundwater table declines, those cavities and spaces where the water was will shrink, they'll collapse, and the surface above it will drop. So the groundwater is declining due to a couple of reasons. One is drought. Northern California has seen some drought over the years, although this last year was pretty wet. But probably a bigger reason is the amount of water residents are pumping out of the ground. Tehama County has a lot of agriculture like almonds and walnuts, which take a lot of water to grow. And, besides the ground sinking and effects on infrastructure, what might be even more serious is that land subsidence decreases the capacity for water storage. So, like I said, those spaces that were holding water collapse. And that means they can't hold as much water anymore in the future. And so the county might be left with less total groundwater with this sinking, even in wet years. It can't be refilled.
So what is the county doing about all of this?
The Board of Supervisors met this week to discuss an emergency ordinance which would put a temporary ban on new wells in areas most at risk of sinking, unless you've done a study to show that well won't impact groundwater. This meeting attracted a lot of residents who were kind of, like I said, caught off guard about it. And, eventually the supervisors, after a long discussion, decided to hold off on this ordinance. They'll come back in February and discussed it again. But Jensen, again, with the Public Works Department, said this is an issue we need to take seriously, that if the county doesn't solve it, then state regulators will. And that, although the annual drops in the ground in Tehama County is very small, this cumulative effect is really taking a toll. And if you look at it in the sense of 5 or 10 years, this is a really serious issue.
Well, thanks so much for covering that story, Justin. That's it for the debrief this week. Thanks for listening. You can reach the newsroom with comments on our coverage and suggestions for things we should cover in the future through our news tip line. That's on our website, ijpr.org. And you can find this program and more at jeffexchange.org or subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform.